So when you think about China's tech power, what's the first thing that pops into your head? Is it just massive state subsidies? Or maybe, copying technology? Well, the real story, it turns out, is a lot deeper than that. Something that's been built up for decades. Let's really get into it. Okay, picture this. Germany's Nürburgring racetrack. They call it the Green Hell for a reason. It's this legendary track where giants like Porsche and BMW prove their mettle. But then, in June of 2025, a total newcomer, a company you'd probably connect more with your kitchen counter than a racetrack, they did something absolutely incredible. And get this, that company was Xiaomi. Yep, the same folks who make your smartphone and rice cookers. Their very first car, only a year old, became the third fastest vehicle, I'm talking electric or gas, to ever conquer the green hell. This is way more than just a car story. It's a huge symbol of China's insane, lightning-fast rise in the industries that are going to define the future. And look, Xiaomi's win, it wasn't some lucky fluke. It's part of this massive wave. By 2024, China was already making almost 3/4 of all the electric vehicles in the entire world. They dominate solar panels, batteries, you name it. They're on top. The sheer scale of it is just staggering. But wait a second, this whole thing creates a real puzzle, doesn't it? Because at the exact same time we're seeing these amazing tech wins, all we hear in the news are reports about China's stumbling economy. So how can a country that's apparently facing so many headwinds pull off these incredible triumphs? It doesn't quite add up. Right, and the common take, the skeptic's view, points to some really big problems. The argument usually goes something like this. China's whole state-led model is super wasteful, it creates this brutal, profitless competition, and on top of that, weak consumer demand means their economy might not ever even overtake the US. And look, these are not small problems we're talking about. So that brings us right back to our main question. If the whole model is supposedly so broken, how on earth did a company that makes rice cookers manage to build a record-breaking supercar in just a couple of years? The standard explanations, they just don't really cut it, do they? Well, the answer, according to the analysis we're looking at, isn't as simple as the government just picking winners and throwing a ton of money at them. Nope. It's about something way more foundational. It's this concept called deep infrastructure, and it's built on 4 main pillars. Okay, so what in the world is deep infrastructure? It's not just about roads and bridges, not at all. You have to think of it as the entire ecosystem. We're talking the physical networks, the digital highways, the energy grid, and this is the really key part, the collective human expertise. That know-how that lets a country innovate and then scale up production faster than literally anyone else. So this deep infrastructure rests on those 4 key pillars. You've got transportation networks, digital dominance, the electric grid, and this really fascinating idea called process knowledge. Let's go ahead and break each one down. All right, first pillar, transportation networks. And the scale here it's just mind-blowing. China has built an expressway network that is twice the length of the entire US interstate system. Then you look at high-speed rail. They have more track than the rest of the world combined. And this one always gets me. The port of Shanghai, just that one single port, can move more cargo than all the US ports put together. It's just, wow. Okay, let's move on to the second pillar. Think back to the year 2000. The conventional wisdom, and President Clinton summed it up perfectly, was that you just couldn't control the internet. It was like trying to nail Jell-O to a wall. It was seen as this open force that would naturally weaken authoritarian governments. But China's leaders, they saw things very, very differently. They made a huge bet that they could, in fact, nail that Jell-O to the wall. And they did. They built their own domestic internet, getting their whole population online while still controlling the flow of information from the outside. And you know what? That gamble paid off big time. It created this powerful homegrown tech ecosystem that gave us giants like Huawei and Tencent, and it also gave the government these incredibly powerful tools for managing industry and society. Pillar number 3 is the electric grid, and it really builds on the first 2. China is well on its way to becoming the world's first major economy that's powered mostly by electricity. What does that mean? It means abundant, cheap power, which is a massive advantage for the superpower-hungry industries of the future, especially AI. And that brings us to the 4th and maybe the most important pillar, even though it's kind of subtle, process knowledge. This quote here really nails it. It's all about the hands-on, practical expertise of millions and millions of factory managers, engineers, and skilled workers. It's the institutional knowledge of how to make things, how to make them better, and how to make them at an almost unbelievable scale. You can't really put a number on it, but this might just be China's single greatest economic asset. If you want a perfect example of how all this comes together, you just have to look at the story of Apple's car project versus Xiaomi's. I mean, Apple had way more money, probably better tech, but here's the thing, it didn't have that deep manufacturing ecosystem to just plug into. Xiaomi, on the other hand, did. They could just tap into existing battery partners, electronics supply chains, and that enormous pool of process knowledge. And the results? Well, Apple canceled its project. Xiaomi broke a world record. Now, of course, this entire model comes at a cost, a big one. Those economic problems we mentioned at the beginning, the wastefulness, the cutthroat competition, the weak consumer spending, those are all very real. And in a lot of ways, they're the direct result of this all-in, single-minded focus on building industrial and technological power. But here's the crucial part. From Beijing's point of view, and this quote from Xi Jinping makes it crystal clear, it's a price worth paying. The main goal isn't just fast GDP growth anymore. It's all about achieving technological self-sufficiency and total industrial dominance. And if that means slower growth or more friction with trade partners, well, that's seen as an acceptable trade-off. So that leads to the question, how has the rest of the world, especially the United States, responded to all this? For the most part, the strategy has been to try and slow China down, right? Using things like sanctions and tariffs. But the results, well, let's just say they haven't exactly gone according to plan. I mean, the results kind of speak for themselves. Instead of crippling China's tech giants, all this pressure has often just made them stronger, more resilient. Think about it. After getting hammered by sanctions, Huawei's revenues are right back to where they were. The chipmaker SMIC has doubled its revenue, and Chinese AI is rapidly closing the gap with US leaders. What these restrictions really did was trigger a kind of Sputnik moment inside China, forcing them to double down on becoming self-reliant. There's a line that really sums up the central critique of the US strategy, and it's a punchy one. Washington is sending lawyers to an engineering fight. It basically argues that this is an engineering problem, not a legal one. And look, the US has tried to build up its own strategic sectors, right, with things like the CHIPS Act. But just throwing money at new factories isn't enough. Without that underlying deep infrastructure, without the energy grid, the supply chains, and that all-important process knowledge, these efforts have really struggled to get off the ground. And all this leaves us with a final and pretty provocative question. Maybe the whole focus on trying to slow down a rival is missing the point. Perhaps the real challenge is something much, much harder. Figuring out how to rebuild your own country's foundational strengths so you can compete in the decades to come. So the question isn't just how to slow them down, it's how do you speed yourself up?